Hello and welcome to this edition of Bayou Time. I'm your host, Keith Weisheit, licensed clinical social worker. Thank you so much for joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it very, very much. Always glad to have with me some of our local leadership. Here with us, Jerome Z. Zeringue, State Representative of District 52. Jerome, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me, Keith.
We appreciate it. Boy, there's a lot of talk lately about these constitutional amendments. You know, I always like having somebody like you coming on just to really kind of help us understand what the kind of intent is of these amendments and how we should think through them.
Sure, and there's a lot of misinformation, Keith, quite honestly, and quite frankly, there's a lot of things going on, and these amendments are, for the most part, the only thing that's on the ballot.
Right.
There's nothing, a big election or something that's going to kind of draw people in, but it's important that people educate themselves and get information regarding these amendments because they can and will have a significant impact if they're fortunate enough to pass.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about this first one. I know the first two are really the big ones, but let's talk about this Constitutional Amendment number 1.
Yeah, that's the streamlining amendment, and basically what it do, it would allow for a single authority to oversee the collection of the sales taxes that are remitted to the local entities, which right now the locals are responsible for.
Okay.
The challenge we have right now is we are only one of very few states that don't have centralized collections. And the impact to Louisiana is that similar like our neighboring state, Mississippi, they have a centralized sales tax collection process. With the pandemic, everybody's kind of staying at home, shopping at home. Right. Last year, their online sales tax generated close to around $400 million for the state. In Louisiana, we roughly, because there is Amazon and others do it already,
right,
but it was right around $30 million. So
wow,
there's a potential significant impact. And one of the things that we need to recognize too with this amendment, it doesn't increase taxes. That's some of the misinformation out there. It doesn't increase local taxes. It doesn't affect the rates. But what it does is allows for a central collection process which streamlines the process, making it more favorable to business, and also minimizes legal challenges because some companies who, unfortunately, if they do business in multiple parishes, the potential is they get audited multiple times, right, and it makes things much more difficult and problematic for businesses. And there's a possibility that they could then take legal action to try to minimize that so that Louisiana could conform with the requirement of the Supreme Court, which ruled that basically states have to have a centralized collection service to be able to collect online sales tax. And so this is what it's going to do, and it's going to set up a commission. By passing this amendment, it doesn't automatically say that it's going to impose it. It sets up a commission that will then establish legislative rules that have to be passed by a majority of both the House and the Senate.
Right.
So 2/3, in addition to setting up the commission that will make it better for the local entities and the state, there'll also be there will be legislation that will be developed in support of this that has to go through both houses again before it will pass, but the commission will establish the rules and set policy and have representatives from municipal authorities. They'll have representation from police jury associations, sheriff's associations, and local municipalities, in addition to the House and the Senate and the governor's representative, to make these rules, to make it more streamlined and efficient and effective.
Yeah, and so let's put that back up, Jen, if you don't mind. Let's put that back up on the screen and let people know what they can vote for, what a vote for would do, and a vote against. So based on the example that we just were given and how that worked in Mississippi, a vote for would allow for a single authority to oversee the collection, electronic filing, and policy guidance for state and local sales taxes. And in the example that Z just gave to us, that would mean the difference between some 30 million or some 400 million,
yes,
a significant difference. A vote against would continue to constitutionally require separate collection, filing, and policy oversight of sales taxes by the state and local governments. And it just seems like a more streamlined approach makes more sense.
It does. And a lot of the misinformation out there and concern, obviously, is that for the most part in Louisiana, the local entities collect the taxes, either the school board, the sheriff's association, or others, and they feel that they're somehow going to either not receive the revenue. It's not going to affect the revenue that they receive. It's going to change the process. Right now, there is an e-court system that all the parishes utilize, but it's going to be more efficient, and it's going to allow them to participate, but also complying with the Supreme Court ruling is going to make Louisiana give Louisiana the opportunity to collect those sales taxes online that we are missing out on right now.
And so there's a lot of these taxes that we just miss.
Yes, and
Because
revenue.
we're not streamlined. And it's still going to go to those entities when
Exactly.
it's appropriate or apropos for that particular area,
Right.
wherever it needs to go. So this one seems like one that we really want people to pay attention to. So flash that one more time, if you don't mind, Jen, up on the screen, and just kind of show, again, the Amendment 1 is a sales tax streamlining, and you can read right there what a vote would be for and a vote against. And again, it's already a Supreme Court ruling that states begin to streamline, right?
Yes. And the Supreme Court and the Constitution basically say that they have to have standards and fairness across the United States, and these rules, or at least allowing for the centralized collection, would help Louisiana comply with that.
Yeah, and so we want to, we want to kind of catch up with the times, if you will.
That's right.
And we have a tendency of being a little bit slower in doing that. We want to make sure we're careful. We want to make sure that it's fair, but that it seems like the Supreme Court has already kind of put those things in place for us as we kind of wrap up this segment.
Right, and it helps put us in a better business climate as well. Again, when you look at Louisiana, we have the highest, any other state in the nation, the combined local and state sales taxes than any other
Right.
state. And what this does is by complying with that, it'll also allow us, it won't affect the rates of the taxes that are increased, but it'll become more efficient and put us in a more favorable business climate that businesses don't have to have the challenges of all the different audits and stuff like that.
Wow, and it just simplifying and streamlining, it just seems to make sense. And so we want people to really be better educated about that. We appreciate your updates on that. Let's talk about this second constitutional amendment, because it's got a lot of moving parts that people really need to understand.
And it truly reflects major tax reform. Again, it doesn't solve all the problems, but it starts making incremental steps to improving our antiquated, bloated, out-of-date tax structure in the way we collect taxes and utilize state funding, which we need to do. And this helps improve the system that we have right now. So as you can see right now from the PAR update, it's going to lower the minimum rate of income tax on personal, corporate, and on franchise. It's going to eliminate some of the franchise tax, but it's also going to eliminate the federal itemized deduction. We are only one of 2 states that allow for federal, your taxes that you pay, your federal taxes, you can deduct that from your state taxes, which links us to the federal system, which unfortunately when the federal government taxes you a lot, it's less revenue to the state, but when there's less taxes, it's more revenue for the state.
Okay.
Because what happens is that if we reimburse the federal itemized deductions, then the state pays you for that, and we're only one of 2 states that do that.
Right.
So the important thing with this, in addition to removing that, it reduces the brackets. We have 3 brackets of personal income in Louisiana.
Right.
We have 2% on the first $12,500 you make. Then you have 4% on the next $37,000 up to $50,000, and then on $50,000 and above you pay 6%. This will reduce those brackets to 1.85 for the first.
Oh, wow.
It'll reduce from 4 to 3.5, and the highest bracket, 6%, it'll reduce it to 4.25. And that's
Wow,
important on
that's
a personal level,
significant,
yes.
yeah.
So every bracket receives a benefit. Now, this is intended, it will be, for the most part, revenue neutral.
Okay.
Because you don't want to impact the state's revenue to a great degree, but you want to provide the benefits to personal individuals, which is going to have an impact, and it's going to be somewhat revenue neutral, and it does that by removing that federal itemized deduction, of which, with the federal changes, hardly anybody was itemizing anyway.
That is correct.
So
Yeah, for people who itemized for many years with some of those changes, they kind of stopped.
That's right.
Last 2 years.
And by removing that, it allows us to then reduce these brackets, which benefits and allows all the taxpayers to benefit from that. At the 6% rate, we are one of the highest. At the higher bracket, we are one of the states that has the highest. While reducing it to 4.5, we will have the low. Only South Dakota will have a lower bracket than us at 4.25 if this is passed, which is pretty
Wow.
significant. It helps from the personal income level, and so the corporate, it does a lot on the corporate level as well, because
Okay.
right now there are 5 brackets for corporate taxes as well. There's a 4% on the first $25,000 of taxable income, then it's 5% for 25, then 6% at 50,000, and then 7% at 100, and 200 above 200,000 you pay 8%. Again, all these brackets make it complicated and affect businesses. What it's going to do is reduce that to 3 brackets, and it's
Okay.
going to be for 50,000 up to 50,000 you pay 3.5. Above 50,000 and up to 150,000, you're going to pay 5.5%, and everything above 150, you pay 7.5%. So it reduces the number of brackets, which helps business. It's more favorable to the business community, and it's going to reflect and offset the benefit that increasing, enticing business to come and utilize and do business here in Louisiana, help them to come in. It's going to offset any potential downfalls of those modification of those brackets.
Yeah, because we've lost business here in Louisiana at times when people are realizing that the tax structure and the tax bracket that they're in for their business is going to be higher than somewhere else.
Yes, it is. And Louisiana, again, as I mentioned, we have the highest, sales tax and income tax,
Right.
and the personal income tax as well. In terms of these brackets, or there's a lot of states that don't have any income tax. So, again, this puts us in a better puts us in our ability to compete with other states that allow to entice both business, but also provide a benefit for individuals as well on their personal income taxes. And it also, on franchise taxes, it's also going to reduce the franchise tax. There's different levels of franchise tax that we pay. The tax is $1.50 per 1,000 taxable capital gains. 300,000, they pay $3 per 1,000. And so what it's going to do is basically eliminate any franchise tax below 300,000 and reduce that rate to 2.75 on that above. So it helps the franchise tax and helps businesses and puts us in a more favorable climate in terms of attracting and allowing us to attract business to the state.
Well, and so on many levels, it looks like this one makes a lot of sense. Put that one back up, Jen, if you don't mind, and let people know what they can vote for. So a vote for Amendment 2, which is tax reform, would lower the maximum rate of the income tax and allow removal of a major state tax deduction, triggering statutory reforms for individual and corporate income and franchise taxes, as outlined by Zeringue here for us. A vote against would keep the Constitution's current tax rates and the requirement to allow a deduction for federal taxes paid, which would stop all of the statutory reforms. And so, again, a really good recap on 2. I know it's complicated, but people, I think, now will have a little bit better idea that this could be an advantage both personally, for business, and for some of those taxes that will affect people coming in.
And it reflects true reform in terms of our tax structure, something that we desperately need and have been trying to implement. I know for the two from last term and from this session, we always try to do tax reform, but at least this, if it passes, will be the first attempt to truly improve and benefit the tax structure in Louisiana.
And, talking about 1 was simple, 2 a little bit more complicated, 3 and 4, these are particular amendments, these constitutional amendments, are a little bit more simple, but really important that we consider and talk about what they mean.
They are. And again, in the spirit of full disclosure, I'll just let you know I'm voting for all 4 because I think they are beneficial and will help. Amendment 3 and 4, 3 is somewhat confusing because it talks about taxing authority for levy districts. And everyone around here knows how important the levy district is.
And the work that they do.
Yeah, the work that they do and how important and beneficial the system is and maintaining it. But this does not affect our levy district in any way. Essentially what this does is allows for those levy districts that were created after 2006, after Katrina,
Right.
to allow them to have the same authority that our levy districts, New Orleans and other levy districts created before 2006, have that authority to assess up to 5% property, 5 mil property tax without a vote of the people if the board votes to do that.
Okay.
So it just gives them the same authority that other levy districts have. It doesn't affect our tax. It doesn't affect the levy district tax. It doesn't affect our levy district in any way because Terrebonne Levy and Conservation District, South Lafourche Levy District, North Lafourche Levy District, they already have that authority.
Right. And they put those into place early on and asked the people, and so we were able to do that early on. So we're kind of ahead of the curve in our area. So this in 3 is just going to allow other people to catch up with what we're already doing.
Right. It allows them the funding that they need to provide protection, the critical protection that we are implementing now. And credit to the folks in here in Terrebonne and Lafourche who are taxing themselves. Mm-hmm. But they were given the authority, they had that authority to impose that, and that was the seed money that got these things started, that property tax. It just allows these other levy districts, and I'll just go over quickly the names. It's going to affect 5 levy districts: the Chenier Plain Levy District in Calcasieu, Cameron, and Vermilion, the Iberia Parish Levy District, Squirrel Run Levy District in Iberia Parish, Squirrel Run, I don't know where they came that name,
really
St. Tammany Levy District, and St. Tammany and Tangipahoa Levy District. So it's really going to affect those. And the thing with this is, so it has to pass statewide, and it has to pass in each individual district. If it fails on any of those, then it just stays like it is.
Stays like it is. But we understand the importance of levee protection, and you mentioned several areas that have a lot of flooding issues.
That's right.
And so those things need to be considered. So I'm based on that, I'm going to vote yes for that one as well, just so they have the opportunity to be able to coordinate what their needs are for their area to prevent some of that flooding, which for what we had was categorically a 5 storm. We had very little issues because of our levee boards and what they've been able to do.
Our system is very important in terms of both maintaining our coastal communities, but also in terms of our ability to economic growth and keep people here and just protect our local communities. Without the levees, Terrebonne Parish would be in desperate shape, as you know.
Far worse than we were from this storm. So let's talk a little bit about 4. And so this is the other one that's on the ballot that needs a little better explanation.
So 4 is really allowing the state to increase its ability to tap into dedicated funds in the event there's a deficit.
Okay.
So if it's projected, the revenue estimated projections are, well, we anticipate having a deficit this particular year, like we did when our first term. We had over a $2 billion deficit that we had to address. And right now, within the Constitution and the way it is within the state statute, is the governor can assess, or in addition to implementing certain measures to ward off a deficit, he can also sweep 5% of dedicated funds to state entities and agencies. What this would do would increase from 5% to 10%. So it just increases the percentages in the event there's a deficit to hold off and minimize the requirement that either you cut services or the alternative is increased taxes. So by doing this, it just frees up some of the money.
Yeah, and so it's right now we don't have very many options. We've got 2 options to really affect that versus this, which gives the governor's office a chance to be able to say, we've got this 5% that we can do something with to offset that deficit.
That's right.
Yeah. So just maybe a little bit of a recap here as we're finishing up of 1 through 4 and why it's important, in your opinion, to vote yes for those.
Okay. Again, 1 and 2 are important because they are going to make significant and fundamental changes in our tax structure. For our internet, it'll provide us to receive revenue that we're missing out on.
Right.
And again, we're not taking away taxes from any local entities. So that's definitely going to make sure that it's just going to streamline. It's going to set up the commission to address that. It doesn't automatically implement it. 2, again, it reduces the brackets. That's significant in terms of reducing the brackets for personal income, corporate, and also franchise. And it's doing that by offsetting from the removing the federal itemized deduction, which is important, and that's what allows us to reduce those brackets. Again, 3, helping those levy districts that don't have the authority, those 5, to have the same authority that other levy districts has. It doesn't increase taxes, doesn't affect our levy district. And 4, just increases the percentage of when it's projected that there will be a deficit, we can utilize dedicated funds to offset that deficit.
And it prevents them from making difficult decisions of cutting services or taxing. It
yes.
says, let's use this money to prevent that deficit. And like you mentioned, right when you got involved, it was a significant deficit. And y'all had to make some really difficult changes.
Decisions.
We talked about that.
That's right.
And some of the challenges with that. Z, can't thank you enough for spending some time with us today and really going over what we need to do to be aware of how we should kind of vote. And I think it really helps the public, and we appreciate it.
Good deal. Remember to go vote. And Keith, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Again, that's Jerome Zeringue, State Representative District 52, taking care of the people, representing the people, and certainly letting us know what we can or can't do in taking care of going out to vote. All right. That'll do it for this segment. Don't go anywhere. A lot more Bayou Time when we continue.